Final ending of The Gem, Part 1 down below. This is a fiction one. Subscribe if you enjoy it. What do you think? Because he was a psychopathic monster. No, like all good psychos, he can be very charming, loving, and even vulnerable. He either hid his true nature well or he changed radically later. I have no idea. Like the proverbial frog in heating water, I stayed way too long when things got bad. Then, I suddenly found myself in an old basement and didn't have a choice anymore. Say, you know where we are, right? This somehow looks familiar. Really, I took a look around. To our right, there were still rocky hills, and the coast should be just behind them. It was too overcast to see the sun in the sky. Nina peered about as well, appearing rather alarmed. With a somewhat unladylike exclamation, "Crap," she said. "What?" I asked in a somewhat stupid way. "He's there." "Yeah, we knew that." "No, he's close. He's closing in for the kill." "Really? It's still bright daylight." "He's a lunatic, remember. He follows some rules, but not always. His behavior has become more and more erratic recently. Now let's head out." "That's what we've been doing all the time." "Let's go faster then." "Are you certain about our destination?" "I hope so." "Hold on, buddy. What is meant by that?" "I have a broken compass." "Instead, I wanted to go along the coast, the shoreline. We departed from there some hours ago." "Tom, let's remain composed. He wants us to become frightened. Maybe a little panic might be beneficial. He's directly behind us, you see." The giant walked rapidly and determinedly after us. About 100 meters away, we both realized it was absurd, but we picked up the pace, and soon we were all walking as fast as we could. "How well fit is he?" I gasped. "Nothing really noteworthy, but he's incredibly driven. He doesn't give a damn about his own suffering or tiredness." Despite the effort, we had to laugh a little as I said, "That's the spirit." We tried the best we could, but it was insufficient. He closed the distance systematically and slowly, and even though we could hear him panting more than he didn't let up. I kept looking back at him, which didn't help at all, and as a result, I missed what Nina saw. She cried out, "What is it?" She answered, "Look," gesturing to something. Far off, it was a tall, gloomy building. That appeared to be a lighthouse. "Oh, SHT, I concurred. Let's go. This might be our only chance." She was correct. Both the crazy person trailing us and I were aware of this. Perhaps he had closed in on us because he knew we were heading back to the tower before we did. When we all started running, we discovered that we could go more quickly than he could. We would arrive at the tower ahead of him, but I questioned what would be gained in the process. I said in between pants, "Can we lock the door?" "No idea. We'll see, right?" "Yes," I thought, "we'll see." I remained silent and simply gazed at her, even though our survival would be at stake. Though I didn't really know her, I sensed that she shared my thoughts. We arrived at the tower ahead of him. We staggered inside and closed the door behind us. "It latches," I heard. In a panic, I shined the spotlight on the door with my phone, trying to find a lock. None was present. Outside came the first loud bang. I weighed my entire body against the door. Nina sprinted around the room with its dirt floor, trying to find something to stop it with. She thought of a little piece of wood that would serve as a wedge first. As long as the old door didn't completely fall, she helped a lot by jamming it beneath it. I remained leaning against it while the external impacts persisted. Nina disappeared downstairs and returned a little while later carrying a longer board. I complimented her job and that effectively barred the door. Still gasping for air, I cried, "We're safe for now." "For now, yes. You can put down your backpack now." "What?" I had completely forgotten about that. I had brought my camping equipment with me for the entire chase. Damn, great exercise, though. I couldn't help but laugh once again. I liked that it happened frequently when she was around. Almost no food left in there, though. "No problem, Tom. There is some downstairs." "How did he get supplies in here, anyway?" "I don't know for sure, but I guess he has a car somewhere. He avoided the nearest fisherman's village, I think." "That would have raised suspicion." "I think he drove to the city, parked the car where the road ends and carried it here." "You think we could reach that car?" "I don't know where it is or where the keys are. I don't even know if it really exists. I just assume it does." "Okay, damn. We're at an impasse, right? He can't get in, yet, but we're under siege. He won't give up, but he'll keep out of sight so we won't know where he is." Truer words were never spoken, Tom. We walked downstairs to get some rest after making sure the door was as sealed as possible, and making sure there was no other entrance. We headed straight to what had been her and her husband's living quarters, avoiding, of course, the body room. Though modest, it was actually rather comfortable for something located in an old basement beneath a deserted lighthouse. "But the dry D has to go," I said. "Otherwise, I won't move in." "Deal. You get rid of it, though." "Hey, it's not my D. I sure hope yours is nicer than that." "It's not mine either. I sure hope you never had one, dried or otherwise." "I can assure you I never had." "Glad to hear that. As no one claims ownership, what about removing it with the glass table it's in?" "I don't know. I always liked the table. He brought it from our old house. I hope the D wasn't in it back then." That's when we both started laughing so hard that we were clutching to each other and barely breathing. The momentary absence of danger and the light-hearted bantering helped ease the anxiety. She then took me to their bedroom. The chamber was compact, featured rugged stone walls, and lacked light save for a single tiny light well. Inside, there was only a wardrobe and a bed. This is where I had to sleep with him. Dreadful, I bet. Yes, being in the same bed with a serial killer is not exactly living the dream. God, I can't imagine. Did he expect, bonding? God, no. That part of our marriage ended early on. Weird. I mean, look at you. Why, thank you. It wasn't his choice. Oh, right, was my response. It was evident that I was ignorant of their marital dynamics, but I didn't consider it relevant to me. We were both tired and had nowhere else to sit with, so we took a seat on the bed. Something startled me all of a sudden. When I awoke, I found Nina curled up by my side and me still in my clothes, resting on the bed. I considered waking her up, but then I remembered how much I loved it and how much she undoubtedly needed rest. It wasn't until my arm went numb that I moved. Hey, she exclaimed. My arm. She startled completely awake. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she exclaimed. No need. It was nice, she said with a cheeky smirk. It was. I might want more of that. I haven't slept that well in a very long time. My arm, I grumbled, even if I also desired more of that. I realized that we were both still dressed in our winter attire when she said, That's because you're still wearing your gear. Take it off. It makes sense why the room seemed warm. At last, we undressed most of ourselves, though it was a painful process done entirely out of need. This manner we slept much better, and before long she was clinging to me like a burr once more. We stayed in the apartment below ground for a few days. At first, I thought I would let him starve in the wild, but Nina wasn't too certain about that. She stated he was resilient enough to stay for a while, but I hoped he would finally move on to find food and shelter. We looked often at the locked door. Although there was no longer any outside hammering, everything appeared normal, but we remained cautious. The circumstance posed a serious risk to life. It was scarcely surprising that we got to know each other very well in a short period of time, given that we were confined to a small space and the same bed. We skipped the more serious subjects and had some great, lengthy conversations instead. She was an extremely lovely woman, and I couldn't help but notice that, but she was married and I wasn't, as far as I knew. Besides, the circumstances were too horrible to entertain romantic ideas. Even yet, when she went to sleep, she seemed to instinctively curl up against me, and I found it more and harder to keep my feelings to myself. The flat was small and extremely dark. Although it was inevitable that we would run into each other, I began to get the feeling that she was occasionally doing it on purpose. There was only one chair in her living room, so I would spend most of my time sitting on the bed in the small bedroom, thinking about Danny and wondering if she was still alive and what had gone wrong. Though her chair was much more comfortable, Nina was usually close by. She frequently succeeded in diverting my attention from the dark cloud of ideas enveloping me, so I didn't mind at all. So, what happened? It could have been a harmless conversation starter, but that was all it needed for the floodgates to open. Despite the fact that it was already late in the year, I told her my story of woe, starting with Danny's lack of affection and ending with my self-doubt and anxieties that she could leave me. Naturally, I also told her about our incredibly painful chat in the tent, how Danny and I parted, and the anxieties and self-blame that followed. She merely listened to me calmly, pausing only when I needed clarification. Talking about my anxieties to a woman who had literally seen hell made me feel like a whiny idiot at times, but she appeared genuinely interested. I could feel her pain and empathy for what I had told her. Though, in my view, nothing compared to what she'd had to go through, Nina appeared to be more appalled by Danny's actions than by her husband's. I was tired when my story was over. It felt like a balloon deflating when I let these words out. I was thankful that Nina hugged me and didn't say anything. She didn't pass judgment either. We resembled two lost souls attempting to console one another in what might be their last days on earth. That's how we dozed off, next to one another, cozy and comfortable. It was completely innocent up until that point. She was cuddled up against me when I woke up, as usual, but this time her go-to t-shirt was missing. She felt great, so I didn't mind at all. Yes, in official terms we were still married. Yes, her spouse had falsely accused her of being unfaithful. Yes, even though Danny was the one who left, I had already called her out for cheating. We didn't let any of that stop us, and we had no regrets about it. It was unexpectedly quiet and intimate, similar to the physical connection that develops between long-term partners. We really did have a lot in common. She then said, still holding on to me, well, I've finally confirmed his suspicions. I'm still technically married and I've had slept with another man. Even with her serious tone, I couldn't help but snort. Really, Nina, I think we can both consider ourselves divorced. In my mind, marriage is not about a certificate, it is a promise to each other. I think we can safely say both of our spouses broke that promise. I don't feel bound by it anymore. I agree, but my lovely murderous husband might not. No doubt, but who cares? He decided he wanted to murder me days ago. He cares, and at some point, he will explain his point of view in detail, I'm afraid. I simply let out a sigh and embraced her tightly while I could. That seemed more than acceptable to her. The basement apartment provided a false sense of shelter despite its strong walls, but even though we were only there for a few days, the time we spent there was intense. Since we didn't have much time together and I wasn't sure what her genuine sentiments were, I didn't dare tell her that I was in love with her. I didn't want to take advantage of our dire circumstances or pressurize her. The time we spent in our underground prison was the most intense, passionate, and romantic experience I had ever had, and I was certain that she felt the same way whenever we managed to ignore the danger that loomed overhead. But we never discussed the future because we were aware that it might not come. There wasn't much food and it wasn't something to write home about. We figured he was completely starved. He would have to take action, or both of us, and I assumed it would not be long. The first bang was while we were checking the door again. Like a hand grenade, it was undetectable. We both gave a small jump. Even though we anticipated this, it was nonetheless unfavorable news. The lunatic was on his way. Nina asked inanely, depending on my precognition, will it hold? I simply shrugged. I noticed the hinges gradually breaking way beneath the onslaught of pounding and said, I have no idea. Probably not. She said, crap, and I couldn't agree more. Clearly, he had discovered a heavy instrument and was pounding it with it. The door was ancient and rusty, but it was also solid. We saw it gradually concede the battle. Let's go upstairs for this. Why upstairs, Nina? I might die today, but I sure as hell won't die down there. All I did was nod. I had to agree even though it made no sense. That stupid crypt was not going to be the last thing I saw, even if we ended up hanging from the ceiling, dried out. We heard the door eventually open and heard him chuckling from behind as we ran up the stairs. He said, mockingly, I can see you. I see you. It sounded like a crazy game of hide and seek. Then he laughed once again, and I realized how much I would detest being killed by someone as crazy as him. It was a little offensive. We hurried up the steps at first until we noticed he took his time. I had to concede that he was correct, crazy or not. Each of us knew the location of our ultimate meeting point and we all had plenty time to reach it. It feels wrong, still, not to run, Nina said. True, but I'm tired already. It won't matter soon anyway. We all know how this is going to end. Oh no, Tom. This is our life we're fighting for. Our future. Our own happy ending. We might lose, but we won't lose without a good fight. Whoa, she ought to have been a motivational coach. I felt better and more determined right away. Our odds of surviving this were considerably higher, perhaps as high as 1%, in my estimation. At last we arrived at the Lantern Room's repair platform, where I had passed several sleepless days. I suggested, let's block the stairs with our bodies. We had no other strategy, so even if it wasn't very good, it worked. Though she didn't seem persuaded, she undoubtedly reached the same conclusion. Standing beside each other, we closed down the opening in the railing where the stairs terminated. He smiled as he glanced up at us. We had a small advantage since we were higher up, and he was aware of it. He brandished a stick that he appeared to be holding in our direction. Being a real maniac, he had duties, of course. One was to laugh at the silliest possible moments, such as this one. He declared, you will make a nice addition to my collection, but I wasn't sure if Nina was included in that. Get out of here. Our union is over, Nina attempted to persuade him. He didn't just nod and leave, which was exactly what I wasn't expecting. Yeah, sure, so you can continue to cheat on me with him. You remember our vows, my dear wife. You swore, until death do us part. Remember, I married a different man. Not an argument about marital vows, but a fight to the death is what I was expecting, and I wasn't about to break it up. I was able to live for a few more minutes, which was a state I much preferred. What are you talking about? I'm your husband. No, I didn't marry a crazy serial guy. He appeared genuinely astonished, which was surprising. Serial killer. Me? No, you don't get away with that. You know and I know that you killed them. Stop trying to pretend that you didn't. I didn't even know them and I certainly didn't kill them. Oh, but you did. You surely did, as surely as you cheated on me with them. I had to finish what you started, you gave me no choice. I had to keep our marriage pure, since you wouldn't. I won't be cuckolded. You're mine. Those men had to go, like this one here. Nina abruptly stopped their marital chat by stumbling forward. He staggered forward due to the sudden force. I used the chance to try to kick his head, but I missed and just gave him a slight graze, which must have hurt a lot but didn't move him in the direction I wanted. I staggered forward too, tripping over him as the barrier seemed to have vanished out of nowhere. Before we might have both tumbled down the entire staircase to the next landing, he immediately reached for a handrail support. For a moment, I thought he would be a fantastic slide. I would have fallen off him by myself if he had tried to toss me off, but I was able to grab his jacket and hang on for dear life. This was the most indecent of all fights to the death. It was like a fight in the playground. Nina lunged to stomp on his hand, but her foot struck his forearm instead. It was a little unnerving when he simply began to roar like an animal without even flinching. He had to use his other hand to grasp onto the handrail support, thus he was limited to using only one. Nina's kick had wounded his free arm. She took advantage of the situation to grab his stick, but I was still sitting on top of him, so she was unable to defeat him. I untangled and made my way up, not even trying to avoid hitting his face with my right boot. After a great deal of confusion, things were essentially the same. Dr. Nuts was ascending toward Nina and me as we stood on the platform. The fact that we possessed the stick this time was the only distinction. It wasn't much, as far as I could tell, but it was the only weapon available, and the best weapon is usually the one you have on hand. Its sole benefit was that we possessed it while he did not. I asked her, non-verbally, if I should accept it as I gazed at her. She just said, tennis, and I nodded. It was weird to think that woman, who I had only met in the most horrible of situations, had ever played tennis. I couldn't picture her in a short white dress. I'd love to see that. She smiled and said, you will, but I had no doubt that she was well aware of our slim possibilities of surviving. All right, kids, that was painful. Enough of these games, the panting giant exclaimed in a low voice that was certainly impressive. This has to end now. I have agreed with him thus far. Nina, you must choose a choice. Return to me. Return to me as my wife. You have only one chance, so make your decision right away. Your life will be spared if you kill him. I'll pardon you once more, but not twice. This is the final instance. He sounded real. I knew she would detest sharing his home, but if she killed me and went for him, at least she would be alive and could have another chance to get away later. It was an alluring proposition and most likely the sensible decision for her. She didn't really know me. It would almost certainly spell my death if she went with me. For a boy she just met, why should she give her life? She said, are you kidding? I detest you. Have you heard that? Hatred, not dislike. Absolute loathing. You no longer even qualify as a human. You truly are a monster. I'll admit that I didn't think much of the man. We got off to a bad start, and things only got worse from there. However, I could see that his shock and hurt were real. Even though he had always attempted to act morally, his wife continued to say those harsh things despite his slightly twisted reality. It was obvious that he truly cared for her in his own, hopefully distinct, way. Despite his booming voice, he said, sounding suddenly like a young boy, but Nina, please just shut up. Think of this as a separation. We're through. Endo. I could practically see the daggers she was aiming at the giant's heart with her remarks, which were rough and cutting. Make a mental note not to aggravate this woman. Now, he appeared thoughtful, even disturbed. He didn't seem to like it any more than I did when it was his time to have his life turned upside down. It took him a few seconds to make up his mind. He responded, so be it, and produced a rifle from his jacket. Oh, hell, Nina and I exclaimed at the same time. That was not what either of us had anticipated, but even if it had, nothing would have changed. I remained shocked, and considering his other benefits, it seemed unfair to use a pistol. He lifted the rifle and uttered the somber phrase, until death do us part. Yeah, whatever, remarked a woman from behind him. He spun around, surprised to find that something heavy had struck the side of his head. He fell away as if he were a stone, exposing the short guy standing behind him. Danny, really, I had thought she was gone. I must admit, that was quite spectacular. You truly believed that you would die for one another. Whoa, Tom, I don't think you and I ever had that kind of resolve or strength. We had a decent marriage at first, but there was never anything like that. There she was, effortlessly calm, resting on her collapsible shovel that I was quite familiar with. She had never been put off by my incapacity to come up with the perfect words for a conversation, and this time was no exception. She continued as usual. Hopefully, I'll locate that eventually. I hope that I wouldn't have done what I did if we had it. Tom, I sincerely apologize for that. Though I believe it wouldn't have happened if our marriage wasn't already fragile, you didn't deserve it. Maybe Mike was merely a message that I was subconsciously ready to move on. I'm not sure, she said, sounding as though we were all enjoying a nice cup of tea while peacefully conversing about the neighbor's new puppy in a Victorian drawing parlor. With equal composure and courtesy, Nina remarked, you must be Danny, and she held a ladle-like hand over the behemoth that had attempted to murder us. I'm Nina, Danny said, I'm glad to meet you, in return. Sorry, my hand doesn't quite reach. The falling madman said, erg, and attempted to lift the rifle toward us once more while frantically mumbling something that could have been Nina. Will you just stop talking so much? Danny pushed, we're trying to have an important conversation here, and struck him with the shovel once again. She used the edge to strike him in the neck this time. The ensuing wound and the considerable amount of blood streaming out made me cringe, yet both women appeared to be in a serene state of mind. He finally dropped the gun as he was dying, and it fell with a clang against the stairway's metal grids. So where did we end up? Indeed, it's an out affair. That may indeed be the case. Nina was remarkably unperturbed by her husband's passing and his final words. She wasn't an insensitive woman, as I personally seen, but I assumed that being a serial killer's prisoner had made her less sympathetic to him. Tom informed me of the events. You sounded as though you were trying to find love. Danny thought to herself, yeah, probably, as the person between us passed out. However, I'll always regret how I handled it. Hell, I nearly died from idiocy. And I definitely have a lot of buyer's regret. How did you manage to survive anyway? I responded. I was picked up and driven to the village by a local. Sheer luck. For weeks, he claimed to be the only person traveling that path. Then you were absent. I wanted to say I was sorry. Then my worries began. Then I became anxious. I made an effort to persuade the locals to accompany me in my search for you. Even before I stated my destination, they wouldn't because of the weather. I went alone because none of them wanted to walk in this direction. I drove the majority of the distance, until the road ends, because they lent me a car. That distance isn't all that great. I'm impressed. Wow. I said, thank you. It was simple to find you here. The lighthouse is the only place you could have been, and the weather has improved much since then. I knew this guy wasn't simply saying hello when I saw him busting through the door. I quickly followed him upstairs, and I saw you right away. As usual, right where the trouble was, she smiled. I realized why I had once been attracted to her. By the way, thanks. Nina responded, you saved our lives. Wave of her hand, no big deal, she said, brushing off the idea. I'm just happy I brought along my reliable shovel. I'm hoping it turns out well. For a minute, she regarded the blood-stained instrument with suspicion. She gave a small shake of her head and went on more earnestly. Tom, I really hope you will pardon me. I sincerely hope my recent lunacy is forgotten. Consider what we started out with. That wasn't too horrible, did it? With hesitation, she grinned. I had no idea what she had in mind, but it was evident. There was no way she could expect for a reconciliation. I wasn't sure if she even understood her own desires or the reasons for her actions. The living area of our new home was comfortable, with a lovely fire going and mugs of tea being enjoyed. This was the most pleasant place one could be in life. Not a single crazy serial killer, not a cold landscape, not a hike. And our teacups were all that was on the glass-topped table in front of us. With my wife at my side, everything in my life was going well. She asked, flashing one of her charming smiles, what are you thinking of? Our way out of hell, I shot back, observing her as she unwinds in her favorite chair. My goodness, that man, I still find it hard to believe that was real. Thank God he's dead. I occasionally still have nightmares about him. Nina, he's passed away. You're secure at home and will always be free of him. Very well, she replied, giving my hand a gentle pat. I do feel a bit sorry for Danny. Every now and then, I also do. We were indeed saved by her, and I will always remember it. However, she made the decision to cheat and go with another man. It's not our fault that she later regretted it and that he was a disappointment. All right, while not everyone was successful, we were. Many thanks to the usual suspects, George Anderson for general tale improvement that verges on co-authorship and Black Randy for her magic with language.